Shrugged383. Welcome to my channel. If you're on my channel, chances are you're a firearm enthusiast, and more specifically, like a black powder firearm enthusiast. If you like cap and ball firearms, cap and ball revolvers, muzzle loading, and that type of thing, I also share your interest, and I try to produce content in that category. Today, what we're going to talk about is the sound. Everybody knows that sound, right? The classic single action revolver clicks. What makes the clicks? You ever wondered? So I'm going to show you what makes the single action revolver sounds. This is a unloaded Pieta 1860 Army Colt replica. It is a deluxe engraved edition. I just got it recently. I'm real happy with it. I had to do some work to get the clicks right on this. These reproduction revolvers out of the box often require a little bit of smoothing, polishing, and that type of thing, and seating in the parts. But once that happens, they are reliable and they function dependably. So anyway, I haven't taken it to the range yet. I hope to get a video up soon of shooting this. But back to the topic. Today we're going to talk about the clicks. All right. Before I show you anything, just listen to the clicks. You hear three distinctive clicks. The first click, this is half cock. This is the position that normally you load this revolver from. If the cylinder is on the frame and you're using the loading lever and everything, the first click is half cock, where you can spin the cylinder freely. The second click is also a half cock. However, the cylinder will lock into place. So it's a half cock, but you cannot rotate the cylinder. And finally, the third click, the hammer is all the way back, and that's the firing position. So let's take a look at the internals of this. I'm not going to take it apart. It's against YouTube guidelines. But I'm going to show you what the parts look like outside of this revolver. Okay, so we have our pistol on the bench. This is where I do my cleaning and any kind of work I need to do on my firearms. Here's the pistol I was showing you that I just received, the Pieta 1860 Army replica. I've got a few parts here, spare parts that I have. But first of all, every single pistol that you buy, every one that you purchase from Pieta or Uberti or anywhere, will come with a manual. Okay, a manual that will discuss loading and safety with these firearms. But also in the back, Pieta puts an expanded, like a dissecting view of the firearm. And this particular one is a Colt. Okay, you'll see here, these are all the components that make these up. They're very simple. That's part of the beauty of these firearms, is they're very simple design. They're not overly complicated. They don't really have a lot of moving parts or anything. It's just a matter of keeping these parts clean, you know, to keep it running properly. But the central piece of the action on a single action revolver is the hammer. And this is a hammer here. And this one is for the 1860 Colt Army, or it would probably fit the 51 Colt Navy as well, and the 61 Navy. They're all basically the same. But this is the Colt hammer design. It's flat in the front because it is for cap and ball revolvers. But this is the central piece. This is what works. This is where you might want to say the magic happens, I suppose, is right here with the hammer. Now, what this hammer is missing is that there's a tiny little wheel that is on the back of the hammer here. A pin holds the little wheel in. I had to use that wheel on a different pistol, so I removed it. But you'll see it here on the expanded diagram. There's the wheel I'm talking about. What that wheel does is ride on the mainspring. Here's the mainspring. That's where the main tension on the hammer occurs. That's what gives the pistol the power, the force to fire a round, to fire a cylinder. By busting that cap and setting off the ignition in the cylinder, which will push the projectile out. So, but that's not what you hear. We're talking about the clicks. This doesn't make a sound. All this, the back of the hammer and the wheel and the main spring do, that provides tension, but there's no sound that comes from that. When you pull this hammer back with your thumb to the first half cock, what happens are a couple of things. This is called the hand. The hand is attached to the hammer and it rotates the cylinder. So when you go to the half cock position, the hand comes up a little bit, but it doesn't engage the cylinder all the way. It allows you can rotate the cylinder against this hand. It has a little spring on the back, see here? It'll push the hand back enough to rotate the cylinder around, and it's rotating clockwise. But this makes very little sound. That's not where the clicks are coming from. The initial click that you hear when the hammer, the number one click, when you pull it to half cock, happens right here on the hammer. These grooves on the hammer serve very important functions. The first one is a half cock. Here's the trigger. When I pull that hammer back to half cock, my trigger sets in this first groove, okay? That is the first click that you hear. The hammer will stay in place like this in half cock, you know, unless you pull it all the way back and then release it forward. It can't go forward from this position. Also, it can't fire. As long as the trigger is in this first groove, it's locked in place, it's not contacting the sear, and it can't fire. Now this trigger, when it goes into this groove, goes in hard. When you rotate that back, it pings in and makes a sound because there's another spring that pushes it into place, and it's this forked spring right here. This is the trigger and hand spring. You'll see it on the diagram. It's right here. See the fork spring? The long arm contacts the trigger and the short arm of the spring contacts this part. This is the bolt. You might call it also the cylinder stop. This is what locks into place on the cylinder to keep it from rotating. The bolt will fit in these little notches on the cylinder, and that's what prevents it from rotating. This is not the correct cylinder, by the way. This is a cylinder for an 1858 Remington. This is a Colt. This is a Colt bolt, so that they're not fitting up, but I'm just for demonstration purposes, I'm showing you how they fit together. That's the first click you hear. This trigger is under tension from this spring. The spring, the long arm on it, is pushing down. It's pushing down on the trigger. So when it goes in, it pings. And that's what you hear. That was it. That was the trigger going into the first notch on the hammer. Okay, the next spot for the hammer is the half cock. You might want to call it the quarter cock. I'm not really sure what this position is called. But what happens on the next click, it's still in a half cock state. It won't fire from that state. See, this is the half cock I showed you. See how the trigger is locked in place? It will not move because it's in this first groove and it's in tight. See how it fits in there? It's very much locked in. When I pull it back again to this next position, the trigger is still locked in place. What happens though is when I pull it back a little bit more, actually the trigger stays in this first groove. When I pull it back a little bit more, what you're hearing, the next click, is this. There's a cam on the right side of the trigger. This one is damaged, but you see the little bump on the trigger? This is what controls the cylinder stop going up and down. When you rotate the cylinder stop into half cock, it allows the bolt to drop so that the cylinder can rotate freely. But when I pull the hammer back to that quarter cock position, the cylinder stop pings up. It goes into place and it locks the cylinder. See? That's the second click that you hear. The hammer's still in that half cock state, but the cylinder now is locked into place where it cannot rotate. And then finally, the final click. This is the firing position. And from this position, the trigger moves to the sear. You notice how this notch is not very deep. Okay, this is the sear, and it's rounded on this end. The hammer's back to this point, and you can see it from this position. It's all the way back. The cylinder's locked in place now because remember, on that quarter cock position, the bolt went into the cylinder. And this is the firing position. So this hammer is under tension. Remember, you've got the mainspring is now fully compressed on the back. In the front, the trigger also is also under tension from the bolt and trigger spring. But from this position, when we pull the trigger, it's going to let go. It's going to let go from that position, and it's going to fire. Boom. But that's all there is to it, folks. Those clicks, and when you pull it quickly, you're hearing all three clicks in succession. You're hearing that half cock click on the trigger, the bolt rising up and hitting into the bottom of the cylinder, and then you're also hearing the second position that the trigger is moving back into for the full cock, the firing position. And that's all there is to it. If you have a problem with this firearm, it normally comes from one of these components failing. A lot of times it's this. Bolt and trigger springs, they break easily. And there are aftermarket parts for these that are actually rounded springs. They have like a coil. They're not really a coil. They still are a forked spring, but they're stronger. They're not this flat type. The hand springs break sometimes on these because, again, they're a flat spring. That is there to push the hand into the back of the cylinder so that it can index the cylinder when it comes out. See, there are ratchets on there's like a ratchet of notches. It's a ratchet action. It pushes these up to rotate the cylinders, but that can fail. And also, these parts can fail. These little ears on the bolt, sometimes these can break. And as occurred on this particular hammer, the cam, the half cock cam broke. There's no way to fix that. You have to get a new hammer if that happens. What happened here is once that sheared off on the end, the pistol wouldn't go into a half cock position where the cylinder would rotate freely. So I had to get a new hammer. This one was ruined. And then later on I had to use the little roller in the back, the little wheel on a different pistol. So, all right. Well, I hope you learned something. You know, it's fun to dig into these pistols and kind of figure out what makes them work. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I do plan on making some range trips soon to shoot these pistols because I really enjoy that. So, Atlas Shrugged 383, have a great day.